Hey friends, well, happy whatever day of the week it is. I hope you're doing good, and I have resorted to putting lemon juice in my hair. I'm trying all kinds of techniques to to deal with the root situation. I ordered scissors on Amazon to cut my children's hair. Yes, pray for my children, because anyone that knows me knows I cannot cut in a straight line, and that's okay on paper. It's a whole nother thing when it's your hair. But anyway, all is good in the Gambill household, so I hope all is good in yours. And I hope that today, somehow this blesses your world. Today, I wanted to ask you to choose to press refresh. I am not very good with technology, as I've told you several times now. The fact that this works every single day is a miracle, a sign, and a wonder. Yes, it is. That I press the right button and upload the right file is actually giant leaps for me. And I remember learning about a button on my computer when I first got my laptop, and I began to work away from home a lot when I was traveling. And the team had to sit me down and explain to me the use of this one button that I didn't know existed. And that button was the refresh button. Because they would be sending me documents for me to edit. They'd be sending me media files for me to approve and sign off. And I would go back and say, it doesn't look any different than the last time you sent me it. I've been on the file and it's the same information. And they would say to me, no, it's not. We've updated it. And then they would say, it's because you've not refreshed the page. And what they were letting me know is I have to not just go back to the place where I last looked at the file. I have to go back there, but first I have to press refresh, because since I was last there, things have changed. Friends, we are in a season where we need to all be willing to keep pressing refresh. I want us today to choose in our own lives, but also towards others around our lives, to actually put our finger, as it were, on the button of refresh in some things that we see and some things that we say and some things that we actually expect in the coming months and weeks ahead. This is, I believe, a great window of opportunity for us to update some things in our thinking and in our believing. We all need to refresh. None of us are going to come out of this season the same. And if we do, then it's a really big missed opportunity. Our churches are going to look different. I don't know how, but they will. We're going to be different. I hope in a good way. There's going to be so many changes that we have to navigate. And we can't just go back expecting everything to look the same. So why not choose now to get used to that refresh button that we're going to really need in weeks or months from now? You know, all throughout scripture, there are examples I could take you to where the refresh button made the biggest difference. That actually it was not the changing of the entire circumstance, but is actually just the willingness to press refresh in the moment that someone found themselves in. I think sometimes we think everything has to change. We have to move away. We have to change our friendships. And sometimes we do need drastic changes, but other times we actually just need to go and refresh. You know, the story of the prodigal comes to mind, and maybe it's a story you're well familiar with, and maybe you're watching this and you are a prodigal. And if you are watching this and you're a prodigal, I am so thrilled that you actually gave me the time to be with you today. Thank you. But maybe one of the reasons why you've remained a prodigal is because you're frightened that no one's going to allow you to re-enter, to actually have that refresh button applied to your life. Maybe some of you are living in the past because no one's allowing you to press refresh and forget the past. And if someone's doing that to you, maybe you also have to ask, have I done that to someone else? We can all be guilty of freezing people in time. You know, I've been in the same church all my life. And that's a long time, people. I'll be 47 in June. So 47 years in the same church. I have had to press refresh over and over again. And people have had to have the grace to press refresh about me over and over again, because yes, I'm still Charlotte, but I'm changing on a regular basis. So that refresh button is really important, because we've got to have grace to allow each other to change so that we can do this journey for longer together. I'm convinced many people leave churches, many people walk out of scenarios because they didn't press the refresh button. And so the prodigal, let's think about him for a moment. When we read his story, he's at home. He's like, I've seen it all before. There's nothing for me here. I want to get out of here. I want to do my own thing. And so he does. He takes his inheritance. He goes to do his own thing. And he finds himself in a place where actually he comes to the end of himself. What he thought would happen didn't happen. The blessing and the prosperity he thought was out there was not out there. And he ends up actually in a place of loss, and actually ends up at the worst of his time in a pig pen eating the pig's food. And it's in that moment that actually I want to just jump into his story, because it's in that moment that it actually says these words: he came to his senses. And when he came to his senses, he suddenly began to press refresh about his home. Listen to this. He said, when he came to his senses, all those that work, all the farmhands that work in my father's house, they sit down to 3 meals a day. And here I am starving to death. They have a good life, and here I am in a pig pen. And all of a sudden he realizes what I thought was a terrible life was not a terrible life. That actually people that are in my father's house are well looked after, well fed, well taken care of. So he says in that moment of realization, you know what? I'm pressing refresh, and I'm swallowing my pride, and I'm going home. And he begins the journey home. He's refreshing in his mind the view of his dad and the view of his household. But what I love about this story is that at the same time, the father has already pressed refresh towards the prodigal. Because as he gets home, the father comes running out to meet him. He comes and says, I am so excited that you're here. And as he's on his knees saying, I don't deserve a job, the father's saying, you don't even need to get on your knees. I have a coat for you. I have a ring for you. And I'm throwing a party for you. Why? Because the father didn't freeze him in the moment of rebellion. And he didn't freeze him in the moment of disappointment. When he saw his son coming, he pressed refresh and all of a sudden ran out to meet him and welcome him home. In that story, there was one person that didn't press refresh, and that was the older brother. When the father says, come join us as we celebrate your brother's return, he refuses to come to the party because he refuses to press refresh on how he views his brother. To him, his brother's let him down. To him, his brother is a disappointment. To him, his brother left him to do all the work. And in those moments that he chooses not to press refresh, he disqualifies himself from a relationship that actually could have been a huge blessing to his future. How many of us are like a prodigal that maybe needs to press refresh about some things that we said, I can do better myself. I don't need this. Maybe you've said that about the church, God's house. Maybe you said, I don't need the church. And right now in this season, you're pressing refresh and thinking, actually, the church was never the problem. That actually it was me that had an issue that I needed to resolve. And maybe you're going to find a pressing refresh is going to get your eyes focused back on God and actually focus back on the people of God. And maybe you right now are the older brother and you have some resentment in your heart, and maybe it's stopping you from finding a relationship or finding a breakthrough or actually just coming into a sense of community with people around you. And you, like that older brother, you can make a choice to stay stuck there, or you can press refresh and say, actually, I need to forgive and I need to re-enter this relationship with a refresh mentality. Let me give you another example. This actually is really scary that this actually could happen. And actually, I don't ever want it to be said of our lives. But Jesus is telling the story of what happened in his hometown. It says this in Matthew 13, verse 53. I'm reading from the Message. When Jesus had finished telling stories, he left there and he returned to his hometown. And he gave a lecture in the meeting house. And he made a real hit, impressing everyone. We had no idea, they said, he was this good. How did he get so wise? How did he get such great ability? But, listen to this, in the next breath, they were cutting him down. We've known him since he was a kid. He's the carpenter's son. We know his mother, Mary. We know his brothers. And his sisters live here too. Who does he think he is? And they got their noses all out of joint. And Jesus said, a prophet is taken for granted in his hometown and in his own family. And he couldn't do many miracles there because of their hostile indifference. Here's Jesus going back to his hometown with one heart and one mind to bless them, to encourage them, to deliver them, to heal their sick. He's going back to teach and to bless. But in that hometown, no one was willing to press refresh. They said, oh, we appreciate that you got some talent, but we can't accept it because we can't refresh the page in our mind that you're just Joseph's son. And actually, it's annoying to us that you would come and try and teach us something. And their hostility was felt towards Jesus. And Jesus said, that shut down any miracles I could do. Their inability to have the bigness of heart and mind to press refresh about Jesus stopped any of them receiving the blessings and the breakthrough that they desperately needed. You know, familiarity is a huge deal. Familiarity will stop us receiving what God's trying to get to us. And I don't want any of us to treat people with familiarity, and allow in this season God to take you to one side and help you press refresh over some people and some circumstances that maybe actually the blockage is not on their end, it's actually on your end, because you have an old page loaded on the screen in your heart about that person that God needs you actually to go and press refresh on, because there's some updated information that you need to receive in this season that will allow you to see them differently, hear them differently, and receive differently. Let's not be familiar with the leadership that's over our lives. Let's not be familiar in our local church settings. That's hard for me to say because I am a local church leader, but I don't know what church you're from. And I want to say on behalf of your leaders who probably would never say it, you know what? Let's not be familiar with those that are laboring in the word for us. Let's not be familiar with our church. It's not meeting as usual, but I'm pretty sure your team in your church, wherever that is right now preparing a word for you, praying over you, reaching out and pastoring in a completely different context. Meanwhile, navigating what you're navigating. So let's not be familiar. Press refresh in this season and pray for people that maybe you don't normally pray for. Reach out and encourage those that maybe you wouldn't normally encourage, because in this season, we all need to press refresh. Let's press refresh. I think right now in our nation, everyone's pressing refresh of their appreciation of the NHS, of the appreciation of the doctors and the workers in our community that maybe before this they took for granted, maybe even complained about. But in this moment of time, everybody's realizing I need to press refresh with what I believe and actually with what I've been saying. So let us all today to choose to go to the screen of our life, wherever it needs it, and press refresh. Refresh how we view people, refresh how we speak about people. You know, assumption is a terrible thing. Don't just assume some things in the season. Press refresh and let God download some new information in your heart and in your soul. And I think it will change even our households, how we treat one another, but actually how we treat God's household and actually how we treat those around our lives. So today, my friends, I wonder if you are the prodigal and you're watching this, I want to say to you, I'm so glad you did. Press refresh about how you believe God views you. Press refresh about how you actually believe you'd be received. Because can I tell you, if you're that prodigal right now, God loves you. He is already running towards you. And you are just a prayer away from making that recommitment. And you will find that God has a party on hold for you right now. So don't stay in that place of disappointment or despondency today. Come home and actually press refresh, because God is waiting for you. Maybe you need to press refresh in a relationship and go say some things or put some things right. Don't be that older brother. Don't cut off the miracle that God has for you by being familiar. Today, let's all choose to refresh in whatever area we need to so we can receive all God has for us. Love you guys. Have a great day refreshing those buttons in your soul and in your heart towards one another. God's going to do some really cool stuff in this season. Mark my words. And if you're a prodigal and you need someone to pray with you, let us know and our team will reach out to you straight away. Love you guys. Have a great day.